Mick Foley's love of pro wrestling was sparked at Madison Square Garden as a fan in the crowd. It was there that he saw Jimmy Superfly Snooker leap from the top of a steel cage onto Don Morocco below, a moment that seared itself into his memory and shaped the course of his life.
Mick started his own career wrestling under the name Jack Foley, but it was in Texas and later WCW that the Cactus Jack persona took hold. Cactus Jack was part outlaw, part lunatic. Not a polished star, but something special was developing. By the early 1990s, Cactus Jack found a home in World Championship Wrestling, and that's where his legend truly began to take form. He had matches against the likes of Ron Simmons and the man they called Sting. However, his feud with Big Van Vader became the stuff of wrestling legend. Vader was a monster, stiff, brutal, and unrelenting. And Cactus Jack? He kept coming back for more. Their matches were notoriously hard-hitting, physical and violent, continuing to put Cactus Jack on the wrestling map. After leaving WCW without establishing himself as a top guy, Foley embarked on a run through Japan's deathmatch scene. In 1995, he returned to the United States and found a temporary home in Extreme Championship Wrestling. ECW was small, raw, and real. His promos during this time are still remembered today. ECW gave him a platform to develop his character further. But ECW wasn't the final stop for Mick on his pro wrestling journey. In 1996, Foley signed with the World Wrestling Federation, and with that came another transformation. He would debut as Mankind, a disturbed, masked figure who lived in boiler rooms, spoke in twisted whispers, and pulled his own hair out. His early feud with The Undertaker helped cement him as a main player in the eyes of the fans. These were brutal matches. Boiler room brawls, buried alive bouts. Hard-hitting, yes, but also theatrical and psychological storytelling. The chemistry between Undertaker's stoic mystique and Mankind's tortured chaos was perfect. Then came the infamous Hell in a Cell in 1998. At King of the Ring that year, Mankind faced The Undertaker in a match that would redefine wrestling forever. It was never meant to go the way it did. Foley insisted on starting the match on top of the cage, something that caught everyone off guard. He wanted a moment, and we all got one. The Undertaker threw him off the cell, sending him crashing through the announce table far below. Then, incredibly, Foley climbed back up to the top of the structure, only to be choke-slammed through the roof of the cage onto the mat. A tooth had gone through his lip. He was barely conscious after a chair hit him in the face on the landing. But he kept going. That match would ensure Mankind would be forever connected with that night, even over 25 years later. After Hell in a Cell, something shifted with the character. The man behind the mask, Mick Foley, was connecting with the fans beyond the brutality of Mankind's matches. Heading into 1999, Mankind's character began to change. The sadistic, shrieking loner softened. He became more human, more relatable. His character began to move towards comedy and away from the crazy stunts of the past. But Foley didn't just evolve emotionally. He also rose to the top of the card as a fan favorite. In January 1999, during an episode of Monday Night Raw, Mankind defeated The Rock to win his first WWF championship. It wasn't the cleanest of wins. There was interference, chaos, and Stone Cold Steve Austin played a big part. But when the 3 count hit, the roof blew off the arena. Fans saw the underdog had finally reached the mountaintop against the odds. and the moment meant even more because of what happened behind the scenes. On the same night, WCW was airing Monday Nitro Live and tried to spoil Raw's taped results by announcing sarcastically that Mick Foley was going to win the title. "That'll put butts in seats," Schiavone said. Instead, over 500,000 viewers changed the channel to watch Foley's win in real time. It was a turning point in wrestling history and in the Monday Night Wars. From there, his feud with The Rock continued. The two had polar opposite styles. The Rock was smooth, athletic, charismatic. Mankind was awkward and unpredictable. Their I Quit match at the 1999 Royal Rumble was especially brutal. Mankind took repeated, unprotected chair shots to the head. The imagery was disturbing, but it told a story of resilience. Foley didn't quit. Not easily. Not ever. Despite the brutality, their chemistry was undeniable. So much so that after their feud ended, they were paired together as an unlikely tag team, the Rock and Sock Connection. What began as an odd couple pairing turned into one of the most entertaining duos in wrestling. Their segments became legendary. One, titled "This Is Your Life," saw Mankind throw a surprise party for The Rock, complete with balloons, music, and awkward guests from The Rock's past. It wasn't a match, it wasn't a fight. It was storytelling, comedy and character all rolled into one. And it drew one of the highest ratings in Raw history. Foley's versatility became clear. He could be violent, funny, emotional, and absurd, sometimes all in the same night. He juggled personas with ease. Mankind, Cactus Jack, and even Dude Love, a groovy, peace-loving throwback to a character he created as a teenager. Each had a distinct voice, look, and energy. But all were unmistakably Foley. He would use the three identities to his advantage when he entered the same Royal Rumble on 3 different occasions as each character. This was affectionately known as the 3 Faces of Foley. By the year 2000, Foley's body was wearing down. Years of brutal matches had taken their toll. Chair shots, falls, barbed wire, thumbtacks. The risks he took in the name of entertainment had added up at the peak of his powers. At No Way Out in February 2000, he faced Triple H inside Hell in a Cell, this time as Cactus Jack. The build-up was intense. It was billed as his retirement match. If he lost, he'd be forced to leave WWE. As the match unfolded, Foley gave everything. He fell through the cell. He landed hard on the mat. He fought, scratched, clawed, until he could no longer stand. Triple H won the match. But once again, the crowd stood in respect, chanting Foley as he left the ring. It was the end for Mick Foley in the WWF. Or was it? Mick Foley's first retirement was meant to be final. However, his passion for wrestling kept drawing him back. Just a few weeks after his farewell at No Way Out, Foley returned to the ring once more, this time at WrestleMania 2000, competing in a fatal 4-way match for the WWF Championship. It was one last shot at a dream, to main event a WrestleMania. He didn't win the title, but the moment was symbolic. A man who had once wrestled in flea markets and empty gyms was now center stage at the biggest show of the year. After stepping away again, Foley turned his attention to writing. In late 1999, he released his first autobiography, Have a Nice Day, a tale of blood and sweat socks. Written entirely in longhand on yellow legal pads, the book was raw, honest, and full of heart. It didn't just become a wrestling bestseller. It topped the New York Times list and opened the door for other wrestlers to tell their own stories in their own voices. Foley continued writing, releasing novels, children's books, and follow-up memoirs. He was funny, self-deprecating, and deeply reflective. Whether writing about wrestling, family, or his own doubts and injuries, his words connected just like his matches did, with true authenticity. With Mick, a return to the ring was never far away. In 2004, he returned to WWE for a feud with Randy Orton, a new generation star on the rise. At Backlash, Foley, as Cactus Jack, faced Orton in a hardcore match that was both brutal and poetic. It featured barbed wire, thumbtacks, and vicious spots, but also passed the torch. Orton came out looking tougher. Foley reminded the world who he was. The match became one of the most celebrated of his career. 2 years later, at WrestleMania 22, Foley faced Edge in another unforgettable match, one that ended with both men crashing through a flaming table. This match gave Mick what he had always wanted, a WrestleMania moment. After stepping away from WWE's full-time schedule, Mick Foley would eventually find a new chapter waiting in TNA, total non-stop action. He joined the company in 2008, bringing with him a legacy of hardcore storytelling, wit, and emotional depth. While TNA wasn't as globally prominent as WWE, it offered Foley a chance to still perform for the loyal fan base he built up. He didn't arrive to chase titles right away. Instead, he became an on-screen authority figure, serving as the executive shareholder of TNA. In typical Foley fashion, he played the role with humor, quirkiness, and just enough unpredictability to keep things entertaining. His segments were full of inside jokes, heartfelt promos, and the occasional outburst. In 2009, he stepped back into the ring to feud with the TNA World Champion, Sting. The two had a shared history from their WCW days, and now, years later, they told a new story. This time about two veterans facing the realities of time, legacy, and purpose. At Lockdown 2009, inside a steel cage, Foley defeated Sting to win the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. It was unexpected, emotional, and in its own quiet way, significant. Here was Mick Foley, years past his physical prime, still finding ways to connect, still reminding fans that wrestling isn't just about youth or strength. It's about heart, about character, about moments. Foley's TNA run also saw him engage with younger talent like AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. Though his matches were fewer and his pace slower, his presence still mattered. Mick Foley brought star power and credibility to TNA. Foley would part ways with TNA in 2011, ending that chapter of his career. And while his time there was shorter than his legendary WWE run, it added another layer to his journey, one that proved, even in new surroundings, Mick Foley was still the man. In 2013, Mick Foley was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Standing on that stage, he reflected on the journey, from basement promos with childhood friends to sold-out arenas and best-selling books. He had never been the fastest, the strongest, or the prettiest, but he was real, and he was loved by the fans. It didn't matter if it was Mankind, or Cactus Jack, or even Dude Love. Mick Foley just wanted to make sure you had a nice day. You've been listening to Wrestling Sleep Stories. Thank you for spending a little quiet time with us tonight, reliving the journey of a pro wrestling legend. Whether you're still awake or already fast asleep, we hope this story brought a sense of calm, nostalgia, and comfort as you begin to drift off. Until next time. Rest well and take care. Good night.